In 1985, Maurizio tells Patricia that he's leaving for a quick business trip to Florence. The gag is, the next day, he sends a friend to tell her he ain't coming back. He's done. Welcome to Graceless Crimes. The channel dives into true crimes of passion, panic, and pure foolishness based on my own research. I'll also share personal thoughts at the end, and all of the information comes from a public source, so feel free to do your own digging and your own research. If you like this kind of content, hit like and subscribe for more true crime updates. Let's get into this Gucci murder. Really interesting because I did go to school for fashion. I thought I was that girl. Did my little blogging back in the blogger era, Tumblr, WordPress, all that. And this is just something I was always interested in, but never really dug deep. So I did do some research and it gets a little crazy. Also, I'm going to do my best to do these Italian pronunciations. I did go to Rome once. I'm like one of those girls who studies abroad and thinks they're from the country, you know? I'll do my best. Before we get started, I want to give a huge thank you to my auntie, my favorite person. She was my true crime bestie. She really introduced me to like Dateline, 48 Hours, all the things a 8-year-old should not be watching, but I absolutely was there watching with her. So I do all of this kind of in memory of her, and you guys get to come along. So this is the story of the murder of Maurizio Gucci, and it's a little bit of greed, a lot of bit of betrayal and revenge. And at the center of it all is one woman who becomes known as the Black Widow. So it all starts back in 1921. Guccio Gucci was inspired by his time working at the Savoy Hotel in London, and he opened a small leather shop in Florence. And so his craftsmanship and his style really caught the attention of the wealthy, right? And the elite, they were custom. And the House of Gucci was born. So by the 1950s, he had a couple of sons, Aldo, Rodolfo, and Vasco, who were running the entire empire. Now, Aldo ended up taking Gucci, the brand, to Rome and New York. Rodolfo ran the Milan branch of the company, and then the brand became this global symbol of luxury. Let me back up just a little bit. So, Guccio Gucci was married to a woman named Ada Calvelli, and then they had 6 kids. There was Ugo, Aldo, Enzo, Vasco, Rodolfo, and then there was one daughter, it looks like, Grimalda. Of course, the daughters were not seen as, part of the brand, so to speak, or they didn't want the women to be behind the brand. This has never been tied directly to Guccio Gucci himself. This has more been tied to Rodolfo, who was one of Guccio's sons and was also Maurizio's father, who is the victim in the story today. Rodolfo's distrust wasn't towards women in general, but specifically towards Patrizia Reggiani. So we're going to go into who she is, how she met Maurizio, and his untimely death. Before we even get to Patricia, there's like a whole other level of family drama that was involved. So in 1969, we have Giorgio Gucci, who is Aldo's son, and I have to put some family tree up in here because it's a lot of people. Sparked the first family feud, of course, because he started his own line, the Gucci Boutique. And it was eventually pulled back into the company, but the damage was already done. And then in the 80s, brought another level of chaos. So Paulo Gucci, which is Aldo's other son, tried to launch Gucci Plus behind his father's back. Now, I don't know why he didn't learn from his brother that we don't do that around here, but he went ahead and tried, and Aldo was actually accused of keeping the profits for Gucci America, which he owned outright. So in order to kind of calm the storm, it looks like the family turned Gucci into a public company in 1982. So the public listing was considered kind of a peace treaty of sorts. And they consolidated the different branches into what we now know to kind of be like Guccio Gucci SPA. And then they made it a publicly traded company in Italy, dividing the shares among family members. This was meant to kind of keep everyone happy, there was transparency, and then the business would still remain under one roof. Now, when they were going public, it brought in a lot of capital to expand internationally and also modernize their operations. She grew exponentially with 700,000 handbags produced each year in the 80s. And that mass production was starting to dilute the brand's luxury status, right? The other part is when they IPO'd, it didn't really dig into the deeper problem, which was that everybody still hated each other's guts, okay? So in the 80s, a company comes along called Investcorp, and Maurizio ends up selling half of the company to Investcorp. Other fun little tidbits about the Gucci family. There was a New York prosecutor by the name of Rudy Guliani. You might know him. Aldo ends up going to prison for tax evasion when he's like in his 80s, thanks to Rudy Guliani. So that puts the entire company in Maurizio's hands. And because of the overproduction of bags, that is kind of why the shares end up going to Investcorp. Just funny. Behind every crime and behind every shady dealing is like Rudy Giuliani, Penguin from Batman, just like lurking in the shadows. It's just, I can't. So let's back up a bit. Let's get into Mauricio and Patricia's love life, marriage, and his unfortunate demise. So it's 1970. Mauricio's at a party and he meets this beautiful, stylish, glamorous, ambitious woman. Her name is Patricia Martinelli. She was born in Vignola, which is a province of Modena in northern Italy. And when she was about 12, her mother, Silvana, marries a very wealthy man named Ferdinando Reggiani, who ends up adopting Patricia, which is why she becomes a Reggiani. When she's around 22, right, 1970, she meets Maurizio Gucci. And you know she knew who he was, right? He's the heir to the Gucci fashion house. And some people say like she saw him as a ticket into a very glamorous life. It's what she'd always wanted for herself. So on October 28th of 1972, they get married and they move to New York. Now, Gucci's father, Rodolfo, did not like Miss Patricia. He didn't approve of the marriage, and he actually believed she was a social climber who had nothing in mind but money. And that is a direct quote. He doesn't approve of the marriage at all, but he still gives his son and his new daughter-in-law this luxury penthouse in New York's Olympic Tower. Now, to my research, and maybe my brain doesn't know how to do math well, or I'm just too poor to really, comprehend, but the Gucci family Olympic Tower penthouse was estimated to be around $35 to $45 million. So the address that I have is 641 Fifth Avenue. If you know anything about New York, Fifth Avenue is where all the rich people have penthouses. Sometimes they're empty. They're full of freaking paintings they're never going to use. They're just, collecting coins like a Mario game. This particular penthouse had multiple floors. Guccio Gucci turned the two apartments on the building's 50th and 51st floors into the current mega unit, and they're now owned by their daughters, Alessandra and Allegra Gucci. This little wedding gift, I'm all mad. I'm all bitter. This little wedding gift. Okay, sorry. So this wedding gift, right, was 9,450 square feet. The residence boasts 8 bedrooms, 8 full bathrooms, 2 extra powder rooms, because you need 10 bathrooms. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's necessary. The other cool thing about the penthouse too is that it has panoramic views, so you can see St. Patrick's Cathedral, the Empire State Building, Rockefeller Center, and the Chrysler Building from this apartment, penthouse, luxury villa. I don't even know what to call it. The living room is 66 feet long and bathed in natural light. It freaking damn well better be. Okay? 1972, they're now living in this luxurious penthouse. And the couple quickly becomes kind of fixtures in the Manhattan high society. And they're rubbing shoulders with all kinds of folks, including the Kennedys, particularly Jackie Kennedy Onassis. They have their two daughters, Alessandra and Allegra, in 76 and 81. So, by all accounts, they're happily married, but there's some funny business going on, right? Remember, Maurizio Gucci was Rodolfo's only child, and so, everything was on him in regards to the business. In 1982, they end up moving back to Milan. They keep the penthouse, but it looks like the fairy tale ends there. In 1985, Maurizio tells Patricia that he's leaving for a quick business trip to Florence. The gag is, the next day, he sends a friend to tell her he ain't coming back. He's done. He's done with you, boo. Now, listen, heartbreak is hard. But is it that hard if you have a penthouse that can fit a yacht in the living room? Do you know what I'm saying? I feel like Patricia took the wrong route. But again, just my personal opinion. He's focused on saving the empire. The last thing he does in his life for the last decade is really help put this brand on the map and bring it to the empire that it is today. And in the meantime, Patricia is getting very bitter. Now, there's a woman named Cherie Loud who dated Maurizio for about 5 years during the separation. Patricia was always unkind, always put him down, and didn't want to do anything he wanted to do. We don't know if this mistress was all up in their marriage like that. It's always what the man tells them, so who knows? That's just what she said. Goes on to say that he didn't love her anymore and that he'd had enough. So they're living separate lives. So I would say that's fair from her standpoint if they're not living together. I don't even think they're in the same country at this point. In 1990, Maurizio begins dating another woman. Her name is Paula Franchi. She's a model and interior designer, and they move in together. Okay, so rumors of marriage start to swirl. Mind you, he's still married to Patricia. So there's that. Now, this terrified Patricia because she wanted her money. Okay, not her man, honey, her money, honey. So remarriage would cut her out of $1.47 million annually in alimony. And it would cut it in half. A lot of money. Not going to sit here and act like it's not. But girl, it wasn't like they were going to cut all of it out. You were going to get half. Annually. You could just put some in the Hermes bag, save up in a Chanel bag. You would have been okay. I can't even fathom that amount of money. So for perspective, $1.47 million in 1990 is $3.62 million in today's money. Okay, that's a lot. Should have took the money. Let him get remarried. At least you would have got some. Some of these men out here doing a lot of nothing with a lot of empty pockets. I could live with that. He famously calls her alimony being cut in half, or the possibility of her alimony being cut in half, as a bowl of lentils. The drama. Anyway, so the divorce isn't final until 1994. So they're separated for 9 years, okay? And Patricia loses her husband. She loses half of this $1.5 million annually. And she also loses the legal right to use the Gucci name. Friends of hers have said that she was more devastated about losing the Gucci name than even losing the man himself. Rodolfo was right, I guess. I mean, parents be knowing, your parents can see these things happening before you do. And as you get older, you realize, oh man, my mom knew what she was talking about that friend that didn't like me, or this person that was like an energy vampire, whatever it is. Now we're at the fateful day. It is March 27th, 1995. Mauricio arrives at his Milan office, and a man steps forward and shoots him point blank 4 times, 3 to the back, 1 to the head, and he dies instantly. That is a hitman shot, if anybody knows. The same morning, Patricia gets her ass down to the apartment, the one that Maurizio was sharing with his girlfriend Paola, and she goes on ahead and finds time to evict Paola. So you gotta go, Miss Girl. Wrap this up. Okay, pack up your stuff. Go ahead. And so in her diary, Patricia actually writes a single word in Greek that says paradisios. Paradisios? If that's not how you say it in Greek, I'm so sorry. Which means paradise. What's really interesting about this case is that it went unsolved for 2 years. The police seem to have first looked into family feuds because remember, there was all those family feuds in the late 60s through the 80s. And so they had a lot of people to go through. And I do wonder if that's what delayed the process. But yeah, for 2 years, the case goes unsolved. Patricia and the girls, her daughters, are up in the apartment of their dead father and his girlfriend, just living life. These poor kids obviously did not know their mother was behind the hit, but in fact, spoiler alert, she was. So now we're in 1997, and the police finally arrest Patricia along with her close friend, a psychic named Pina Ariema, okay, and 3 accomplices. One of the accomplices, by the way, the guy who's the hitman, they call him a debt-ridden pizzeria owner, is Benedetto Serrallo. And the prosecutors say, listen, this is the motive. It's greed, it's jealousy, it's revenge, and there was no other good reason for it. So if Mauricio had married Paola, then Patricia would lose her lavish lifestyle, right? It would shrink, remember, to a bowl of lentils, she said, $700,000 or whatever. So the press dubs her the Black Widow, and Patricia doesn't help her own case at all because she's yapping. Okay, she tells reporters, "I still feel like a Gucci. In fact, I'm the most Gucci of them all." Are you, girl? Are you? So 1997, she ends up being sentenced to 29 years in prison, and it was reduced to 26 on an appeal. And then in 2011, she was offered parole only if she took it as work release, like a job. I do not mean to laugh. This is a true crime. But y'all, they offered her to get out in 2000. She is in jail since 1997. Okay. It's 2011. She's offered to get out only if she does a work release job. She refuses. She says, I've never worked in my life, and I am certainly not going to start now. Listen, how audacious of her to be like, I would rather stay in jail than work. Like, girl, like nuts. The marbles aren't up there, girl. Also, I want to know, is it like a luxury prison? So in 2016, after 18 years behind bars, they do release Miss Patricia, walking free for good behavior. Right after she was released, some TV crew caught her. And even though she's always said she was innocent, that her friends set her up, like she's always maintained her innocence, one of the reporters says something to her like, why did you hire a hitman to kill Maurizio Gucci? And why didn't you shoot him yourself? And she turns and replies to them, my eyesight is not so good, and I did not want to miss. So she does work now, and as part of her parole, they did offer her that work release again. She took it. It looks like she does jewelry of some sort. Her first things that she did when she got out of prison was to go shopping. She went out to Via Monte Napoleone, which is Milan's Bond Street. She was decked out in jewels. She had her movie star sunglasses on. She had this freaking macaw on her shoulder. I'm going to show you what a macaw is because I barely know. Like, I have a vague idea of it. Mauricio Gucci was only 46 years old when he was killed. And the company had just freaking IPO'd a couple of months after his passing. His last legacy was turning the company on its ear. So he's murdered at 95. The company's on shaky ground. Family's infighting. There's all this overproduction. And it kind of left Gucci financially unstable, right? So in 94, right before his passing, Best Corp, which was based in Bahrain, fully owned Gucci, and they promoted this American designer from Texas by the name of Tom Ford as a creative director. Tom Ford was actually an architect turned into a fashion designer. Tom Ford comes and starts working on Gucci as creative direction, but he had been there since 1990. And when he took the helm, like, he transformed Gucci overnight. If you know Gucci from the 90s, it really kind of turned into this like high glamour, unapologetically sexy, a lot of sleek satin shirts, like plunging necklines, hip huggers, and kind of just this revival. They really brought back Gucci horsebit and the Guccissima, which was just really innovative for its time. And the runway shows became like events. And this is kind of when we start going into supermodel status. We have Naomi Campbell, Cindy Crawford, Kate Moss, all the girls really embodying and showing the world what the Gucci woman was at the time. Powerful, seductive, in control. Gucci kind of did like power suits for, women in business, which is so funny because Rodolfo didn't want that particular woman, the Black Widow, to be running his brand. And then at the same time, like, the consumers actually women. Interesting about Gucci too is quick history. Because of Tom Ford, the creative director, and Domenico De Sol, who was the CEO of Gucci at the time's partnership, it created a new duo in all of fashion houses that they follow to this day. So Tom Ford was given full creative freedom, and the CEO handled all the business behind the scenes and all the brand positioning. And that really built up the brand in an aggressive way. They scaled back on the cheap licensing deals, they refocused on exclusivity, and they used kind of these provocative, sexy ad campaigns to spark controversy, conversation, all of it. Hi, co-host. So by the late 90s, Gucci actually soared from being almost bankrupt to actually being worth and making $1 billion a year. And they call this era, which was from 94 to 2014, the Tom Ford era. It didn't just rescue Gucci, but it also set a new template for how fashion houses can be run, right? Pairing celebrity creative directors with a powerful CEO and just giving the brand an image and a business empire. He did leave, and sold left in 2004 because there was actually a bitter dispute with the newest owners of Gucci, which is PPR, now Kering. And since 93, no Gucci family member has ever worked at the house, and which is so crazy because of how they started. But the brand remains one of the most recognizable in the world, and the name will forever be tied to glamour, reinvention, and scandal. The story, Patrizia Reggiani, she served her time for orchestrating his murder. And, she's unapologetic to this day. She actually famously said once, "I'd rather cry in a Rolls Royce than be happy on a bicycle." So she was all about the moolah. It's very clear she did this. There was never any other suspects. And, at least Mauricio got to carry on the family legacy and really position the company in a way where it made, waves. Like, comment, and subscribe if you want to hear more true crime. I am going to be putting out more videos periodically. I'm also on Instagram. Do your best, be nice, be kind, and stay graceful. Bye.